Everybody here in Poland was complaining early on he's not in the White House quick enough, or he didn't get a phone call from Trump quick enough. I mean, very petty stuff. Or he's in Washington in September and, he stood behind the desk. We talked about that and, signed an agreement, but they didn't give him a separate chair, and Poles were insulted, and the left tried to gin up, this relationship is Trump's just owns him and it's weak. Totally the opposite. The fact that he's now back, less than a year later, was it 9 or 10 months, or less, 8 or 9 months, and he's getting, for Poland, what we want, incrementally more and more. We've got a laundry list, and this is what I hear in D.C. all the time from people in the government, is that the Poles want all this, but they reach maybe for too much and too fast, too hard. They don't play the game, incrementalism, which is key in D.C. Give and take, carrots and sticks, back and forth, and you get. But there has been no pullback in relations. Trump gave a masterful speech in Warsaw, which he still talks about. He talked about in September. He talked about this past week. That this was one of the highlights of his presidency. There's a real relationship built. You can see it with Trump and Duda. I saw it when I was in the Oval Office in September, that there was like a warmth there. Now it's obviously out that Agata Kornhauser-Duda, First Lady of Poland, and the First Lady of the U.S., Melania Trump, are building a real relationship, and you can see that develop as well, probably owing to some degree to Melania being a Central European from Slovenia. This was a huge success, and historically so. Poles are getting hugely upgraded and enhanced armaments and weaponry. We obviously had, last time it was the Patriot, Raytheon missile defense. Now 32 F-35s, the top of the line, fresh off the manufacturing run and the assembly line planes, fighter jets, and troops coming from Germany, no less, which makes total sense, because why is, with Germany being one of the largest economies and players in the NATO coalition, they don't pay. So they've been free riding on U.S. taxpayer basically since the Marshall Plan. And, we had our biggest Air Force base, I think, outside of the U.S. was in Germany, Ramstein, for decades. And now not only are they not paying for NATO, and with all of America buffering it with lives and investment in financial capital, but they're also running an end road around Central Europe and the EU and the sovereignty around the energy security issue by building Nord Stream 2. So Trump is going to, I think this first, I think it's still out, is it 1,000 or 2,000 troops? On paper it's 1,000, but it may be 2,000. They've got over 50,000 in Germany. I think we're going to see a slow migration over the next couple of years of most of those troops into Poland. Poles have been to the Pentagon multiple times and asked for fixed basing, specifically in Suwałki. I can understand why the U.S. government, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense would not want to do that. Putting a fixed base in Suwałki is huge cost, beyond the $2 billion or whatever cost it is upfront to build it that the Polish government has committed to. It's going to be huge cost in maintenance and constantly rotating troops in and out, and the human capital investment that America would have to make to staff it and make it battle ready. Now you're doing it in a geography as well, theoretically, hypothetically, if this came to pass, that you're sitting in the Suwałki corridor, which is obviously the high-risk spot, but you're also basically saying, Belarus right here and Kaliningrad right there, that you're escalating. And that's not prudent. If you put that base there fixed, my guess is Russia then reacts by adding Iskandars to Kaliningrad and building fixed air bases for their planes that have been using Belarus as their staging area. And then the Baltics and the Suwałki corridor are more at risk. You've not de-risked the situation. So moving across the German border to, and I do think Fort Trump is coming. I just think it's going to be, closer to the Baltic for a few reasons. One, because that gives the waterways and, the American Navy can be very, very effective as a potential deployer of missiles. If there was a hot zone, a conflagration that would spring up in the Baltic and the Suwałki area. Putting something up there also protects the energy infrastructure, which is hugely important to Central Europe for the next 20 to 50 years. And it also doesn't escalate the situation as much and force Russia's hand to then react.